She screamed in the middle of the battlefield, "I am not a prize!" And what happened next silenced 2 entire armies. A virgin princess, torn between faith and forbidden love, must make a choice that could start a war or end one forever. This isn't just a story of love. It's about defiance, sacrifice, and the courage to choose your own fate. If you believe no one should be owned by power or fear, comment below, "I choose freedom." And stay with us. The next powerful story is already on your screen. Hit play now. The cathedral was silent, save for the flickering of candle flames and the soft rustle of Aylin's silk veil as she knelt before the altar. Stained glass windows cast vibrant shards of color across the stone floor, saints with sorrowful eyes gazing down upon her. Her hands were clasped tightly, white-knuckled, in prayer, but her lips barely moved. Behind her, footsteps echoed, firm, deliberate. The scent of incense and old parchment filled the air as the archbishop approached. His voice broke the silence like the toll of a solemn bell. "You are the pure seal of Northaria," he said gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Your body belongs to God, and soon to your husband." Aylin lifted her eyes slowly to the crucifix. Her throat tightened. She nodded, but said nothing. In her gaze, there was no devotion, only the weight of obedience, and something deeper buried, a quiet resistance. The palace halls bustled in preparation. Servants bowed as Aylin passed, her steps graceful, her face composed. At 19, she had become a symbol, the Virgin of God, chosen by divine will, protected by sacred vow, and promised to Duke Alaric of Estravia, a man twice her age, known more for his battlefield conquests than any gentleness of spirit. She had met him twice. He had kissed her hand with dry lips and eyes that did not linger. The wedding would unite Northaria's fading crown with Estravia's steel, a final act of diplomacy to preserve the kingdom. Aylin knew her role. Her body was a treaty, her virginity a seal, and yet beneath her composure, her thoughts burned with silent questions. What if God had never chosen this for me? What if I said no? 3 days later, Aylin's royal carriage moved slowly through the winding paths of the northern woodlands. It was a pilgrimage to the sanctuary of the Pale Cross, accompanied by guards and clergy, a public act of devotion before the sacred marriage. She stared out the window at the snow-dusted trees. The sky was a blank grey sheet above them. Her hands played nervously with the hem of her cloak. The archbishop beside her whispered psalms. She barely heard him. Suddenly, the hooves stopped. Shouts erupted, then screams. The carriage lurched violently. The priest was thrown to the floor as arrows pierced the canvas walls. Aylin froze. "Protect the princess!" A guard roared outside, followed by the sickening thud of steel tearing flesh. The door was ripped open. Aylin's eyes locked with the stranger's. A towering man with blood-streaked armor and a fur-lined cloak. His face was smeared with ash and snow, his hair falling wild over his shoulders. His eyes, a pale, merciless blue, stared straight into her. She could not breathe. He said nothing, only reached in and pulled her from the wreckage like a doll. She tried to scream. He pressed a hand to her mouth, not harshly but firmly. Her voice died in her throat. Around her, the world burned. The cross on her carriage shattered in the mud. Blood soaked the snow. Her guards were slain. Her faith did not save them. The man looked at her again, and in that frozen second she realized this was no barbarian, this was a leader, and her captor, Erika Bjornsson. The pagan warlord feared in every sermon and whispered prayer, now holding her fate in his hands, and God was silent. The scent of pine and frost filled Aylin's lungs as she was dragged through the dense northern forest. Snow crunched beneath the boots of her captors, and though her feet barely touched the ground, she felt the cold seeping into her bones. Her wrists were bound, not with rough rope, but with softened leather. It surprised her. Everything about her capture had. She had expected savagery, screaming, violation. Instead, there had been silence, discipline, purpose. Eirik Bjornsson had not spoken to her since the ambush. He rode ahead on a black horse, his massive figure barely shifting in the saddle, his axe strapped across his back, stained with the blood of her guards. He didn't look back once, but she could feel him watching her, through the trees, through the air, in every breath. By nightfall, they reached the edge of a frozen clearing. Smoke curled from a distant chimney, a small wooden cabin nestled between towering pines, with a thin stream running beside it, now half frozen. They dismounted. She was pulled forward gently but firmly, and when she stumbled, it was Erika himself who caught her elbow. "Walk," he said, his voice deep and sharp like iron cracking stone. Aline glared at him, chin lifted. "Do not touch me." His eyes flicked to her face, unreadable. Then he released her arm without a word and walked ahead. Inside the cabin, it was warm. A fire burned in the hearth, and furs lined the stone floor. Despite herself, Aline felt her shoulders drop, the tension slowly bleeding from her spine. Still, she stood straight, defiant. "You will not get away with this," she said. "Northaria will not rest until I'm found. My betrothed—" "Knows nothing," Erika interrupted without turning. He removed his heavy cloak, snow melting off the edges. "By the time word reaches your duke, winter will seal the roads. So you plan to keep me here like a prize?" He finally turned to face her fully. The firelight flickered across his face, casting half of it in gold and the other in shadow. His eyes pierced her. "You are not a prize," he said slowly. "You are leverage." Her stomach twisted. "Leverage for what? That's not your concern. I am the Princess of Northaria." "You are a hostage," he snapped, stepping closer. "Do not mistake this fire and roof for kindness." Aline didn't flinch. "Then why haven't you touched me?" A pause. Erika's brow furrowed. The air between them pulsed, thick with challenge. She stepped back instinctively. "That's what your kind does, isn't it? Take what you want. Ravish. Destroy." He studied her for a long moment. Then, with a quietness that unnerved her more than any roar could have, he said, "I don't want what isn't freely given." His words landed like a slap. She had no answer for them. He tossed her a rolled fur. "You sleep there." He pointed to the far corner of the cabin, near a stack of dried herbs and a small basin of water. It was warmer than she'd expected, clearly insulated for long winters. There were no chains, no locks, just her, the Viking, and a silence that grew heavier by the hour. The next morning she awoke before him. He lay sprawled on a pile of furs, his chest rising and falling slowly. Scars crisscrossed his torso, some faded with time, others fresher, angry and red. A man marked by war. She sat up slowly, careful not to make a sound. For a moment she simply stared at him. He was not what she'd imagined. He was not monstrous, but he was dangerous, not in the way of beasts, but in the way fire is when it waits. Patient in dry woods. He stirred. His eyes opened, instantly alert. "You were watching me." She turned away. "I was praying." He chuckled dryly. "Pray to your God. Mine has never answered. Because your gods are false. Maybe, but yours is cruel." Aline shot to her feet. "You know nothing of him. He is mercy and truth." "Truth?" Erika stood now too, towering over her. "Was it truth when your church burned my village, when they crucified my father for refusing baptism?" She froze. The words hit harder than she expected. "That's a lie," she whispered. He moved past her toward the fire, tossing in more wood. "You've only seen the world through stained glass. I've seen it through blood." A long silence followed. Then she asked, "Why me?" He didn't answer. That day passed slowly. He gave her food before feeding his own men, a thick stew, coarse bread and smoked fish. She ate only out of necessity. She would not show weakness, but her stomach had rebelled from hunger the night before. The others, his men, kept their distance. They seemed curious but did not speak to her. It was clear that Erica had given orders. She remained his responsibility, and none dared interfere. They argued often about faith, about kings, about whether duty meant obedience or truth. "I was born for this," she snapped one night after he questioned her loyalty to her betrothal. "My marriage will save my people." "From what?" he asked. "Peace bought with your body is not peace. It is slavery and silk." His words cut too deep. She turned away, blinking fast. "You know nothing of sacrifice," she hissed. He was silent for a while. Then, softly, "I know it too well." One evening, after several days in the cabin, she overheard the voices. The door was cracked, and she stepped quietly toward it, careful not to be seen. Erica was outside, speaking to two of his warriors in low tones. The wind carried fragments of their words. "She's too valuable. The Northarians will come for her. We trade her back, alive, or claim her," said one, "by right. You took her. She's yours if you say so." "Eric," the other added, "you could bind her to you and end this war before it starts." A long pause. "She's not mine," Erica said finally, "not unless she chooses it." Aylin's heart slammed in her chest. She backed away from the door as the voices faded. She sat on her bed of furs, breath unsteady. "He could have claimed me already, and yet he hasn't." Why? That night, she couldn't sleep. The fire cast moving shadows across the wooden walls. Her mind swirled with thoughts she wasn't ready to name. And when she finally did drift into uneasy dreams, she saw not Duke Alaric's face at the altar, but Erica's, standing there, waiting, silent, watching. The next morning, she woke up before the sun, lips dry, heart heavy. She turned to Erica, who was sharpening his blade near the hearth. "I am not afraid of you," she said. He paused. "You should be." "Maybe," she said softly, "but I'm not." Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither looked away. He set the blade down. "You're not like them," she said. "The others." "No," he agreed. "Neither are you." She didn't smile, but something in her chest warmed. And for the first time since the ambush, she felt something shift. Not trust. Not yet, but a crack in the wall between them. She didn't know what it meant, but she knew it mattered. And she knew, with a terrible certainty, that the world outside this cabin, her world, would never see her the same again. The snow was falling again, heavier than the day before, blanketing the forest in silence. Aylin stood at the small window of the cabin, watching the flakes descend slowly over the pine trees like feathers from a torn pillow. Everything was quiet, as though the world had paused, waiting, breathless, for something to change. Behind her, the soft, rhythmic sound of steel against stone echoed through the room. Erica sat near the hearth, sharpening a small blade. His focus was intense, jaw set, each movement precise. She turned to him suddenly. "What does it mean?" He didn't look up. "What?" "This claim, the bride by right." He stopped sharpening, lifted his eyes. "You heard. I'm not deaf. I know how to listen." There was a long pause before he answered. "Among my people, when a warrior takes someone in battle, he may claim her. As wife, it is a right older than kingdoms." She stiffened. "So you could have made me yours, just like that." "I could have," he said simply. "Then why didn't you?" He set the blade down, stood slowly. The firelight caught his features, the scar down his left cheek, the wildness of his hair, the strange gentleness in his eyes. "Because I do not take what is not given," he said. "I am not a beast." She swallowed hard. "They say otherwise." "They say many things. Most of them are lies." She held his gaze for a long time. "You're still holding me against my will." "I am," he said, "but I will not touch you. That is your choice." "It always has been." Aylin turned away, her heart pounding with confusion. She didn't want to feel gratitude. She didn't want to feel anything. But he made it impossible not to. Later that day, The wind howled through the trees like wolves calling for blood. Erica was outside, chopping firewood, his bare arms flexing with each swing of the axe. The muscles in his back rippled beneath the weight of the blade. Eileen sat by the fire, pretending to read from a leather-bound psalm book she had begged to keep, but her eyes kept drifting toward the door. He was unlike any man she had ever seen. Men of the court wore silks and perfume, spoke with honeyed tongues, and looked at her with cold calculation. But Erica, he was earth and bone and fire. He did not try to please her. He did not try to own her. He simply was. And somehow that was worse. When he returned, snow clinging to his beard and shoulders, she noticed the blood on his side. "You're hurt," she said. "It's nothing." "Let me see." He frowned, surprised. "Why?" "Because it's bleeding, you fool." He blinked at the insult, then chuckled, low and warm. "Fine." He sat near the fire, pulling up his tunic. The wound was shallow, but it had opened again. Eileen hesitated only a moment before kneeling beside him. She dipped a cloth in warm water and gently pressed it to the gash. He flinched, not from pain, but from her touch. "Hold still," she whispered. He did. Her fingers worked carefully, pressing, cleaning. She was aware of every inch between them, of the way his breath hitched slightly when her skin brushed his. His eyes watched her, quiet and unreadable. "Who gave you this?" she asked. "Bandit," he replied, "north of the river." "Did you kill him?" "No. He was trying to feed his children." She stopped, looked up. "So you spared him?" "Yes." She returned to her work, saying nothing more. When she finished, she tied a strip of linen around his waist. "There," she murmured. Their faces were close. His breath warmed her cheek. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "Because you didn't let them hurt me." "That's not reason enough." She looked into his eyes. "Maybe I wanted to see if you could bleed." He stared at her for a long moment, then he smiled, just barely. "I can," he said. "We all can." That night, the storm hit harder. Wind screamed against the walls, and snow piled against the windows. The fire roared, but the cold seeped through the cracks. Eileen shivered beneath her furs. Erica noticed. Without a word, he stood and took an extra fur from the chest near the door. He tossed it over her, then turned to walk away. "Wait," she said. He stopped. "Stay." His body tensed, like a bowstring pulled too tight. "I won't touch you," he said. "I know." He moved slowly, carefully, sitting across the hearth from her, wrapping his own cloak tighter. They sat in silence for a long time, listening to the storm rage. Finally she asked, "What do you believe in?" Erica stared into the fire. His jaw tightened. "Nothing," he said. "Nothing that hasn't tried to kill me." "That's a sad way to live." "It's the truth." She watched him for a while, then said softly, "I believed in God. I still do. But I don't know if I believe in his plan anymore." He didn't respond. "My father died when I was 10. They told me it was God's will, that he was needed in heaven, but I needed him more." Still, Erica said nothing. "My mother stopped speaking after that. She went to the convent and gave herself to the church. I was raised by priests. They taught me duty, silence, purity." She laughed bitterly. "Purity, as if that's all a woman is worth." Erica looked at her, then truly looked. There was pain in her words, in the trembling of her voice. "You are not only that," he said. "Tell that to the Duke. You don't love him. I don't even know him. Then why marry him?" She met his eyes. "Because it's what I was born to do." Erica leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "No one is born for chains. I am a princess. My people depend on me. They don't need a martyr. They need truth." Eileen didn't answer. The wind screamed louder. The silence between them grew heavier, filled with all the things neither of them could say. The next day, the snow eased, but the cold did not. Eileen went outside for the first time, wrapped in layers of furs. The sky was clear, and the air bit at her skin. She stood by the stream, watching it bubble beneath the ice. Erica came up behind her, quiet as always. "You're not used to the cold," he said. "I'm not used to freedom. You're not free. I'm more free here than I ever was in the palace." He looked at her, head tilted. "Why?" She turned to face him. "Because for the first time, no one is telling me what I'm supposed to be." "And what do you want to be?" She hesitated. "I don't know yet." That night, as they sat by the fire again, she asked him to tell her about his village, the one the Crusaders destroyed. He spoke slowly, voice low. His mother had braided his hair every morning. His father had taught him to hunt. He had a sister who sang to the moon. "They came in white," he said, "with crosses on their shields. Said we were devils, that we had to be cleansed." He didn't cry, but his voice cracked once. "I hid in the woods. I heard my mother scream. They thought her screams were prayer." Aylin felt the tears come, unbidden. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It wasn't you." "But it was my people." Erica said nothing. The silence between them was not cold now. It was heavy with history, with understanding. When she reached out to touch his hand, he didn't pull away. The sky above the northern forest was a dome of black velvet pierced by 1,000 stars. Aylin had never seen the night like this, so open, so endless. In the capital, the heavens were obscured by stone towers and torchlight. Here, they felt alive. She stood just outside the cabin, wrapped in furs, breath fogging in the cold. Behind her, the crackling fire inside painted golden flickers on the snow. She didn't look back. "You'll freeze," Erica said from the doorway, voice low. She didn't turn to him. "I needed to see." "What? If your gods truly live in the sky?" He stepped outside beside her, silent. His presence was wide and warm, but he kept a distance, as he always did. "My gods are dead," he said after a while, "or gone." "Why?" "Because they watched. When the soldiers came, they watched. They did nothing. You said they lived in the stars. They do, or they did. But stars are cold. They don't listen." Aylin looked up again. "Maybe they're listening now." He glanced at her, snow collecting in his dark hair. "And what would you say to them?" She took a deep breath. "That I'm tired of being told who I am." Erica looked at her for a long time. "So don't be." She shook her head. "It's not that simple. You think because you live beyond the kingdoms and crowns, you're free. But even you have rules. Honor, strength, power. I have pain," he said. "That's what rules me. And I have faith." He stepped a little closer. "Do you?" She turned to him. "I want to." He nodded slowly. "Then don't pray for escape. Pray for understanding." It was not a command. It wasn't even advice. It was something else, an offering. They stood there in the snow until their lips turned blue. That night, she didn't sleep in the corner. She didn't ask for more furs. She just sat near the fire, and when Erica sat beside her, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was no longer filled with tension. It had become a bridge. Aylin broke it. "Tell me something real." He looked at her. "What do you mean?" "Something no one else knows. Something you wouldn't tell a prisoner." He thought for a long time, eyes on the flames. "I dream of the sea," he said. "The real sea. Not the ice-choked edges we have here, but the deep green one, with storms and whales and salt in the wind. I dream of building a boat and leaving this place." She smiled faintly. "And go where?" "Where there are no kings, no gods, no names." She nodded. "That's real." He met her eyes. "Now you." Aylin hesitated, then looked at her hands. "I used to sneak out of the chapel. When I was 13, I'd steal bread and climb the old bell tower just to be alone, just to hear my own thoughts. Sometimes I wouldn't even pray, I'd just scream." Erica gave a quiet smile. "A wild thing." "No," she said softly, "just a caged one." He reached out slowly, his fingers brushing her hand. She didn't pull away. His touch was warm, rough, human. Their eyes met, and there was something in his that frightened her. Not because it was dark, but because it was honest. She leaned forward. He stopped her with just a look. "What are you doing?" he asked, voice hoarse. "I don't know," she whispered. "You're still afraid." "No," she said, "I'm not. You think this is how you repay me? Gratitude." Her eyes flashed. "Do you think I don't know the difference between fear and desire? I think you've been told what to want for so long, you've forgotten how to choose." She stared at him, cheeks flushed, lips parted. "Then let me choose." He stood abruptly, stepping away. "If I take you now," he said, "it means everything, and if it's just a moment of confusion, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." She rose, voice trembling. "And if it's not?" He looked at her, and there was something in his face she hadn't seen before. Fear. "Then I will never forgive myself for how much I want it." The next day, she didn't speak much. Neither did he. But everything had changed. The air was charged, thick with what they hadn't done, what they'd almost done. Later, she walked through the woods alone, guarded from a distance by 2 of his men. She found a quiet spot beside the stream and sat, letting the icy wind sting her face. She thought of the Duke, of the cold halls she was born in, of the weight of duty like a chain around her ribs. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer, not to the God she had been taught to fear, but to something older, something deeper. She asked for truth. When she returned to the cabin, she found Erica staring into the fire again. He didn't look at her. "What if heaven was never mine to begin with?" she asked quietly. He turned his head. "What? That night? I told you if I gave myself to you, I'd lose heaven. But what if it was never mine?" Erica stood slowly, walked to her. "You think I am your heresy?" "No," she said. "I think you might be my salvation." He reached up, touched her face. "Then I cannot touch you." "Why?" "Because I love you." Her breath caught. "I didn't want to," he continued. "I tried not to. But every time you speak, I hear the truth in it. Every time you look at me, I forget what war is, what hate is. And if I touch you now, I won't stop. I won't let you go." Her eyes filled with tears. "Then don't." He stepped back, voice shaking. "If you give me your body out of pity or fear, you insult us both. I'm not afraid, but you're still torn." She swallowed hard, fists clenched at her sides. "Yes, then decide. Not with your heart, with your whole soul." Before she could answer, a horn sounded in the distance. They both froze. Erica rushed to the door, flung it open. The 2 guards outside were already running toward the trees. "What is it?" Aylin asked. He turned, eyes blazing. "Riders." "Yours?" "No." Her blood turned to ice. "The Duke?" He didn't answer. A moment later, one of the scouts returned, panting. "They've crossed the border. Hundreds. Banners of Astravia, knights and archers." Aylin's knees weakened. "He's come for me." Erica's face was hard as steel. "He marches for war." She looked at him, eyes wide. "What will you do?" "I won't give you to him. He'll slaughter your people. I'll die before I give you back to that man." You can't fight him alone." "I won't be alone. But this is not your battle." She grabbed his arm. "Yes, it is." He looked at her, the storm already in his eyes. "I will not let you be the reason men die. I will not be the reason men die for nothing." The camp exploded into motion. Horns, shouting, the sound of weapons being drawn and sharpened. War was coming, and Aylin, standing in the center of the storm, knew the next choice she made would define not only her fate, but the fate of 2 worlds. The sun rose blood-red over the northern hills. It bled through the clouds like an omen, staining the snow and frost with a warning no one dared to speak aloud. The earth itself seemed to hold its breath. Aylin stood atop a hill just beyond the tree line, her cloak billowing in the wind. Below, in the valley, the enemy moved like a serpent of steel, an endless tide of soldiers, banners fluttering black and gold, horses thundering through the frozen ground. Estravia's army had come, her heart clenched at the sight of it. She had once believed that those colors, that crest, would one day protect her. Now they felt foreign. Now they felt like chains wrapped in silk. Erica came to stand beside her, helmet in hand, long fur cloak billowing around his massive frame. His expression was unreadable. "It is a full army," she said quietly, "not just a search party." "It's a siege," he replied. "He has no intention of negotiating, because he thinks I've been defiled." He didn't answer. She turned to him. "You haven't touched me. You could have, but you didn't." His jaw tensed. "That won't matter to men like Alaric. What matters is that I took you. To him, that is already a war crime." She looked out at the valley again, the figures growing clearer with each passing minute. The armor glinted in the pale light. Their war horns would soon sound. She knew what would follow. "Let me go," she said. "No. You could end this." "No. You'd rather die?" "Yes." The words stunned her, sharp and solid. He looked at her now, finally, with fire in his eyes. "You are not a sack of grain to be traded. You are not a tool, and I will not return you to a man who sees you as such. If I die protecting that truth, then so be it." Aileen stepped toward him. "And what of your people, your warriors? Will they all die too, for me?" Erica's voice dropped low. "They do not fight for you. They fight for what you represent, for the chance to say that even a princess can choose." The camp was a frenzy of preparation. Warriors sharpened axes, strapped on leather and steel, painted their faces with runes. Fires burned in ritual circles. The elders chanted blessings to gods long forgotten by the rest of the world. Aileen walked among them. No one stopped her. No one questioned her presence. Some nodded with respect. Some stared with quiet wonder. None touched her. She entered the longhouse where the council had gathered. Maps lay stretched across the central table, and the air was thick with the weight of battle. Erica stood at the head, arms crossed, voice calm despite the growing tension. "They'll try to breach from the western slope," he said. "It's our weakest point. We'll need the stone barricades reinforced there before nightfall." One of his commanders leaned forward. "We don't have the numbers to hold them for long. We'll need to send word to the outposts." "There's no time," Erica replied. "This will be over by nightfall, one way or another." Aileen stepped forward. "Let me speak to him." The room fell silent. Erica turned. "No, I can buy us time. No, I can walk into his camp, tell him I've not been harmed, that I come willingly." "You think he'll believe that?" Erica's voice rose now. "He'll see you walk in and call it proof that you've been turned, that you're a traitor. I don't care what he thinks, but I do." The room stiffened as the words echoed through the rafters. Erica closed his eyes, breathing hard. "I do," he said again, softer. "You're not a pawn. You're not his. You're not mine. You are your own." Aileen stepped close, voice low. "Then let me choose." That night, under the pale light of a frozen moon, Aileen did just that. The two armies faced each other across the valley, torches casting long shadows on the snow. The Vikings stood tall, outnumbered but unbroken, their war cries silent for now. The Estravian forces waited, banners snapping in the wind, bows strung, swords drawn. The air was thick with tension. A single sound would break the silence into chaos. And then, from the Viking side, a figure emerged, alone, unarmed. A woman in a white cloak, her golden hair braided with leather and silver. She walked slowly, purposefully, into the space between enemies, the place where men died for glory and never came home. It was Aileen. Shouts rang out on both sides. Erica's warriors called for her to return. Estravian soldiers lifted bows, unsure of what they were seeing, but she did not stop. She reached the center, lifted her arms. "I am not a prize," she shouted, voice ringing through the valley like a bell. "I am not a possession. I am not a virgin to be bought with blood. The silence was deafening. I choose where I belong. I choose who I fight for, and I will not be used by crowns or gods to justify slaughter. For a moment, the world stood still, and then, from the Astravian line, a single voice called out, "Loose!" The order came like a whip crack. Aelin turned in horror. The archers fired. Erica saw it all from the ridge. He did not hesitate. He moved like lightning, sprinting down the hill, roaring her name. "Aeline!" She turned as he reached her. One arrow sliced through the air, aimed straight for her heart, and in a moment that seemed to stretch beyond time, Erica threw himself between her and death. The arrow struck him in the back. His body jerked. He fell to his knees, then to the ground. Aelin screamed. "No!" She dropped beside him, hands trembling, pressing against the wound. Blood stained the snow, too much of it, too fast. He looked up at her, face pale, lips trembling. "I told you," he whispered, voice barely audible. "If I lose you, there is nothing left to fight for." She wept openly now, tears mixing with the snow on his cheeks. "You fool," she whispered. "You stubborn, stupid, beautiful fool." Around them, chaos erupted. The Vikings surged forward with a cry of vengeance. The Astravian soldiers faltered, shocked by what had just happened, but Aelin didn't move. She cradled Erica in her arms, holding him close, whispering prayers she no longer believed in, begging him to stay. His eyes fluttered. "I am still here," he said. She nodded, pressing her forehead to his. "Then stay with me. Don't go." "I'll try." He coughed, blood staining his lips. She pressed her hands harder against the wound. "You're not allowed to die," she said. "Not yet." A second wave of fighting broke out in the valley below, but for Aelin, the world had narrowed to the man in her arms and the fragile thread of life that still tethered him to her. He had chosen her over victory. She had chosen him over a kingdom. Now they would both have to face the cost. In the end, love is not just about desire or duty. It's about the choices we dare to make when the world tells us not to. Aelin chose fire over fear. Erica chose sacrifice over pride. Would you have made the same choice? Tell us in the comments. Is love worth defying a kingdom? And don't go anywhere. Our next story is already on the screen, waiting to sweep you away into another forbidden tale. Click now to watch.